But I mean, that's just a consequence of not having enough knowledge and so on and so forth. But to pretend you're not making a judgment is itself a judgment. I mean, you're judging that you shouldn't make judgments.
It's also the abdication of responsibility. I mean, I thought this through with my clinical clients at a sort of a technical level too. I learned a lot from reading Carl Rogers, and I would say a certain amount of unthinking sentimentality can be laid at his feet in the clinical and social work world, partly because he proposed that unconditional positive regard for his clients was the appropriate pathway forward. And his critics pointed out that if you watched Carl Rogers in action, what he was practicing involved careful discrimination. But what he meant was something like, accept that the person is of fundamental value and has the capacity to move towards the light, let's say, and work in that vein. But what I would tell my clients, and this was a consequence of my realization that judgment was not only necessary, but crucially important to forward movement, was that I'm not offering you unconditional positive regard. I'm on the side of the part of you that wants things to be better. And I'm going to help you discriminate between the part of you that doesn't want things to be better, that might even want them to be actively worse for all sorts of reasons that all people are prey to, and the part of you that is striving to make everything better. And we'll discuss what better means, and we'll negotiate the strategies, but let's make it clear, this enterprise is to get rid of what is undesirable and to foster what is desirable and to critically distinguish between those two, which is absolutely vital. You can throw your hands up and say, I'm not going to be judgmental, but all that means you're not distinguishing between what's good and what isn't.
Well, I think what I tried to get at was with patients was our, if you like, our existential equality. That I made choices, but they made choices too. I mean, of course, there are conditions where that is not so, and you have to make the distinction between those cases where people really do not have any capability. I mean, there are such cases, of course. But in the prison, for example, one thing that made me a little bit optimistic was that I never said anything in my articles that I didn't actually say to the patients. And the patients understood on the whole. I mean, there were a few in the prison who I think were not reachable by this kind of argumentation. But, for example, in the prison, I said I would not allow the prisoners to swear in front of me. And I had no means of stopping them, of course, and if they continued, I couldn't refuse to treat them on the grounds that they had sworn in front of me, but I did actually stop them. And I mean...
So why do you think they stopped?
Well, I provided an argument. I don't know whether one is allowed to use bad language on your podcast.
You can, anything you have to say that you think is necessary, you're free to say.
Okay. Well, a patient in the prison would come in and say, I've got this fucking headache. So I would say, well, before we go any further, can you tell me the difference between a headache and a fucking headache? Tell me the difference. And he would say, well, that's how I speak. And I say, yes, that's what I'm complaining of. And he said, well, why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I speak like this? Because that's me, you know. And I said, well, supposing at the end of this consultation, I say to you, now, here's some fucking pills. Take 2 of the fuckers every 4 fucking hours. And if they don't fucking work, fucking come back and I'll give you some other fuckers. You find this a bit strange, wouldn't you? So he said, yes. So I said, well, we're equal. I don't talk to you like that, and you don't talk to me like that. And they just stopped.
And you meant that?
What? That
You meant that.
I meant that, yes.
Yeah, right. Well, that's so,
And they
you're complimenting your client instantly. You're saying, look, we're engaged in a serious enterprise here, and I actually care about it. And maybe we should attend to the words we're using.
Right. Tend to the words you're using, and you're going to make a big deal out of fuck, cock, suck, piss, dick, all these swear words. And yet, I don't see any big deal being made out of all the other words that are being used against us, right? So those words there, swear words, anything we consider swears, that's not allowed to be used. You have to use the particular grammar and the fancier the word and the harder the word is to pronounce and the harder the word is to recognize and put into place in a sentence. You guys are all for that. That you're okay with. That's ridiculous. You know that? So a lot of the people that you're talking with are highly intelligent, and I do enjoy listening to you talk to them, and because I do enjoy listening to intelligent conversations. But I'm pretty good at reading between the lines, and I really don't care what I'm missing out of the conversation, really. So I don't really make a big deal out of it in my head when I'm listening to it. But when I hear you guys talking about how important it is to know all those words and to use those words ourselves in our vocabulary to be a better person. A lot of the words you guys don't even consider the sound resonance that they apply. You don't consider the letters, the language, the spelling, the damage that it does to us. Even when you were talking to the music guy, when you were talking to the guy about the guy about language, and you guys were on the conversation of music, same thing. You guys are you're discussing things that should be obvious to everyone that are being used against us, and it's like you're still using them against us. They've already been being used against us for thousands of years, and you guys still want to use them against us from one side. And then the other side, because there's many sides, there's many sides of duality, because we've been divided so often. So, you got, I'm not going to go through it again. You just have many sides of duality. And then this political side of duality, this Democratic side against the conservative side, Republican side, whatever. You guys are doing this. You guys are just doing the same fucking thing in an opposite way.
I remember another person who came in and said, now he'd been in prison several times for burglary, and such are the British police that really you have to want to be caught to be caught by the British police for burglary. But anyway. He said to me, "Doctor, do you think my burgling got anything? Do you think it's my childhood that caused me to burgle? Do you think it's got something to do with my childhood?" So I said, "Absolutely nothing whatever." And he said, "What?" Because he expected me to say, "It must be," and. Then I said, so why do I do it? I said, well, it's quite simple. You're lazy and stupid, and you're not prepared to work for what it is that you want. And he laughed. Instead of being very angry, he laughed. And because he knew that what he was saying.
Right, he knew. And it's a very funny story, and I even laughed earlier when I listened to it myself. But when you listen to shit like this, really you got to think, again, outside the box. We are all products of our environment, but yet we made arguments that we're not. We're all products of our environment because we live in this environment. So if we don't all get together and recognize that, and we're going to continue to say, oh, no, you're not a product of your childhood. You get older and you get to make your own decisions. Yeah, you do make your own decisions based on everything you've been through in your fucking life. You don't just magically turn it around. And so therefore, if you make people's environments real shitty and surround them in shitty situations and give them the shit end of the stick all the time, then yeah, what the fuck did you expect? you know. But you guys, you geniuses, all you psychologists, therapists, over the years have all argued. Oh, gee, is it the gene or is it your environment? Is it the gene or is it the environment? We have all these major discussions on it, and fancy words are used, and all these terms are thrown around to confuse everybody, and everybody has an instinct for these things, but as they listen to them, but they don't know really what to believe. And then you just told what to believe, right? You just told what to believe. Oh yeah, no, it's definitely not environment, it's genes. And that's what we've been going on for quite a while now. Yep, it's genes. We found the genes, and we know what the genes are, and we can track your gene rootage back for many, many generations, thousands of years, by using our false, fake, fucking carbon dating and our carbon readings and all this shit. It's ridiculous. They're full of shit.
And then IQ is completely uncorrelated with conscientiousness, which is a personality factor, and with agreeableness. So
yeah, so well,
it's not obvious that criminals are stupid.
Yeah, no, I personally never found that. And for example, there was a chap came to me and said, "You have to give me something, because if you don't give me something, I'm going to go and attack a child sex offender in the prison." They were kept apart because they would be immediately attacked. But anyway, he said, I'm going to kill one if I get hold of one, if you don't do something. And I said, well, let's think about this. He said, well, why do you feel like that? And he said, well, because they interfere with kiddies, with children. And so I took a bit of a risk. I said, do you have any children? And he said, yes, 3. I said, how many mothers? And he said, well, 3. I said, these mothers, do they have boyfriends? And they said, yes. And I said, 1 or perhaps more? Have they had more than 1? And they said, yes. I said, well, is it likely that 1 or more of these boyfriends has sexually interfered with one of your children? And he immediately got the point. And I said, well, you're not you haven't interfered sexually with children yourself, but you've facilitated you've created the conditions in which such behaviour is likely to occur. Now it's too late. You can't do anything about it now. It's too late. But you can make sure that you don't do anything to further it in the future. And he went out. There was no more talk about killing sex abusers.
Why do you think you got away with that? Well, you said you took a risk, right? So I took a risk. I took a risk. I mean, it was a risk that I didn't know that he had children. I didn't know what. I had a fair idea because it was so common amongst prisoners, sure.
and outside prison.
But it's also a risk. I mean, the risk you took. He asked you to do something because he was going to become murderous, and so that's a pretty salient, immediate, and credible threat, given that a violent criminal uttered it in a prison.
Yes.
And your response wasn't, I better prescribe him a sedative, at least to cover myself up, let's say, if anything does happen. Your response was, well, let's call this guy out for his rather self-evident moral flaws, blind ignorance of which is facilitating an unearned sense of homicidal moral superiority, and let's assume that that's going to be curative. That's a risk.
Yeah, it's a risk, and I must say that when I had quite a few patients who said similar things, and I didn't give in to what was, in essence, moral blackmail. But of course, it did always occur to me that maybe one day one of these people who was threatening something like that might actually commit the act, and then someone might blame me. I mean,
yes, definitely.
That never happened. That never happened. But I was fairly clear that their responsibility was not to behave like that, and he didn't, in my opinion, as far as I could tell, suffer from anything which would have excused him.
Right, some organic impulse control disorder, some prefrontal damage, or I mean, those things do occur. A certain percentage of violent criminals have rage that's induced by epilepsy, and that can be triggered by drinking. And I mean, there are organic syndromes that mimic virtually every moral failing.
Yeah, if he had a psychosis, for example, I mean, if he'd had a psychosis, I wouldn't have said what I said.
My sense in reading your books is, so there is this censoriousness, or that's something you could be criticized about for. And I'm sure, and you can tell me about that, I'm sure you have been criticized for that. And, you know, you've written provocative tracts like The Toxic Cult of Sentimentality, which is a real dagger in some sense. I mean, because people, let's not call it sentimentality for a moment, let's call it empathy or sympathy. And you make a case that, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that excessive empathy, unthinking sympathy, can produce catastrophic consequences because it's not tempered by judgment. And then I look at the personality literature. You know, we have two moral personality traits, roughly speaking. One is agreeableness. And so people who are high in agreeableness are empathetic and sympathetic and self-sacrificing and perhaps resentful because of it. So it's not an untrammeled virtue, whereas the disagreeable types are more likely to be imprisoned. So that's a predictor of antisocial behavior. But they're implacable and stubborn and hard to push around. And so people vary on that distribution. I think agreeableness the empathy dimension is a trait that's particularly good for fostering the care of infants.
I disagree. I disagree with that because, you know, you're not throwing bankers in jail. You're not throwing people of government and demanding that they're out. They don't even have to be in jail. Just demanding that they're out and they're not going to be running these things anymore. You know, you're not doing none of that. Those people are bigger criminals than the criminals that you're talking about. Talking about someone who's a thief or a drug user or some other laws that you break, a fisherman who's fishing without a license. You know, you're talking about people who are breaking these other laws. They're such rebels and all this shit. But all the people that, the bigger liars like Elon Musk and people who are, I mean, I could really run through a whole bunch of them for you that throughout history that were all obviously lied to us. And, you know, the astronauts, right? NASA, go back. So you got a whole shitload of people just right there, all the way back to 1969. We could go back to Tesla and talk about what kind of lying motherfucker he was and how many millions of dollars he made off of the backs of the slaves, you know. Us, meaning us, the slaves. You know, but you're not going there anywhere on any of that stuff. Those people are your heroes. Those people are the people that you're looking up to. The people who invented the same propaganda that you were ranking out in the about Germany and how, you know, Hitler was such a bad guy and everything. We did the same exact shit. We took their propaganda plans. We took their space nonsense. In other words, their rocket scientists. We took all their food poisoning thing. We took all their documenting of the slaves that they like to do. And turned it into social security numbers for everybody. And we did all kinds of crazy shit, man, that we took from them that we supposedly look down upon, that we say are so bad. And then meanwhile, the people that we are now declaring are so bad that we got locked up in jail, I'm still listening to even you, somebody who's so smart, who is so obviously awakening, and I'm gonna listen to that kind of shit that you're leaving. It's all backwards, man. It's all fucking backwards. You guys are all got it backwards.
The little girl finds that there are chickens' feet in it and screams with horror. And so the father and the child is so horrified that the father says, I don't know whether this is what he did literally, but I had to throw it out of the window. So he just took the emotion of the child and said, I have to assuage that emotion any way I can, and the quickest way is the best, because, of course, she would have less emotion if it's dealt with quickly. So there's no attempt to argue rationally about this, that actually chickens do have feet, that they were live creatures once, and this is something that children have to learn. It's one of the things that children have to know.
And so what's the problem with reflexive empathy? Exactly.
Well, it's not exactly empathy.
You know, they're bad guys. They're locked up in jail. Let's even use some of the worst ones, and I'm not defending them. As a matter of fact, I won't even use the worst ones. You could. Somebody else could, but I'm not going to. Someone else could even compare it to and say, well, murderers. You're on these murder. Okay, we'll use what's it called? Justified murder, self-defense, things, manslaughter, right? Use those kind of charges, right? So as those people are going to jail, this guy and yourself get to interview them, make these decisions about them. You will go ahead and put some of their life's experiences behind what they did and all this stuff and how they did it and all that stuff. Okay. But yet, you won't look up to see the mineral streets every day. The mineral streets have been a bit above your head. You're living in Canada, and they've been above your head for 30 years. More than it's 30 years so far that I can count for, definitely, because I was chasing them for 15 years now total. I used to chase them more heavily than I do now. Now it's just so damn easy. Before I used to look at it as chasing them because I was trying to show them to everybody. And I was trying, but then once you figure out, you say, oh, they can see it. They just refuse to fucking look. They just refuse to look. So they see it. So what am I busting my ass for to show this to them, you know? But anyways, no regard for that. You have no regard for any of that. You won't go look at it. Okay, great. If you come and listen to my videos and you watch it and you figure out what the mineral streets are and you start putting it together, okay, that'd be great. That would be wonderful. That's the whole point of why I make these videos. But at the same time, I ask, why have you, such an intelligent person, surrounded by all these intelligent people, all these geniuses, and nobody fucking looks up? Nobody looks up? Come on. And then, again, all these geniuses, all these physicists and scientists and doctors, and you're on with Dr. Oz and everybody. None of you guys can put together the idea that aluminum, strontium, barium, lithium oxide carbons and drop them in the atmosphere and able to push and pull them around and put them into place using sine waves and sound resonance. In other words, cell phone towers and other things like that. And we're not able to push them around, push them into place in order to create storms, push storms, create wind bursts. You're not smart enough to fucking see that? Come on, man. And my point is that why are those not the people that are lined up to go into your jails and prisons, right? That you guys get to be therapists at. Why are the conversations about these people that do these small things, but not for someone? I don't see, oh yeah, I had this prisoner, he came in and I had to ask him and say, okay, you were responsible for 900 deaths because you were directly responsible. We've got 12 witnesses. We got the computer control guy who was controlling the jets that dropped the minerals into the sky. We've got the guy who was running the signals from the cell towers, from these 12 cell towers, in order to push that storm, to start that tornado. We have the evidence on the ground of the trees knocked down the mountain to start another tornado that failed and pushed off to the east. So we have all the evidence against this guy, right? And we got him in there, and we're evaluating his brain to see why he would be such a part of this scam. Now, there was no pilots because the pilots it's a model drone, so the drones just fly around on automatic pilot all the time anyway. So really, it's just you that's responsible, Mr. whoever runs this fucking operation switchboard, right? Because each person could then run 15, 20 jets at a time, one person sitting at a control board, right? The same way that we do all the other drones that we fly around. You don't need 20, 30 pilots to run 20, 30 planes. You telling me you geniuses, you fucking geniuses, don't know this? Jordan, you guys can't see this? Really? So why then, my question is are those not the people that you're interviewing in your jail? Why are you not seeing it that way? I guess is even more to the question. Why do you not see it the way that I'm explaining it? That all these other lies that you're missing, it seems like you're pretending that you don't see them because you're so smart. How could you not see them? How could you not know all this? You worked for the United Nations for a couple of years. I'll keep throwing that in your face. I mean, anybody that works for the United Nations should know everything that I'm pointing out, man. I just don't get it. That's why I don't believe Joe Rogan, Dr. Oz is part of it, Trump's part of it, everybody's part of it. The only question is who's a purposeful liar and who's an incidental, coincidental liar. Because they're the only ones that deserve any forgiveness are the incidental liars, the ones that are the programmers or the any of the leaders that know about it all and know the whole story. Then they know even more than I know. So they definitely should be held responsible. So, you know, these people that are in jail, they're not your side. They're not your side. So therefore, it's you guys as doctors get to go over it all. Oh, gee, you know, he's in a tough family and he took some beatings. And why was this? And we make out all these psychological yeah, they're products of their environment. You give them a shitty environment, you're going to end up with a shitty result. It's that fucking simple, right? So your whole thing about the last video, if you're going to take God out of it, yeah, if you want to keep lying to everybody based on the God stories and what we've been telling them about it, rather than show them the true creator and show them the creator, the false creator, and the true creator. They deserve to be able to see them all. They can handle it. They can handle it. Trust me. And then they're going to know and see with their own eyes that they're all part of the same energy. They're all part of one energy. I've heard you talking about it, but you're talking around it. You're talking about it as if it can't be proven. You're talking about it as if it's just a feeling in us that, it's just a feeling, but we can't really prove it. Yes, we can. We can see it all. We can see the whole fucking thing. And it's easy to see it, understand it, but you won't look. You won't look at the rest of it, you know?
Certainly where I was anyway, you didn't get this complete breakdown. I mean, I never met children of Indian immigrants who didn't know who their father was.
Right. Well, and that's an interesting phenomenon too. I went to a talk at one point at the university 5 or 6 years ago, and a feminist was speaking, a former feminist, maybe a real feminist now. Her name was Janice Fiamengo, and she had been a radical leftist feminist and was in the English literature department, and eventually realized that what she was involved in was an academic scam fundamentally, and turned into quite a vocal critic of that particular perspective, postmodern, say neo-Marxist perspective. She mentioned to the audience that intact families with fathers, the children in those families do much better on virtually every measure you can possibly imagine. And in my naivety at that point, I thought, well, that's going to be an incontrovertible statement, because all you have to do is be remotely familiar with the childhood development literature and you figure that out right away. And yet it was as if she dropped a live snake into the audience, because, and this is that toxic sentimentality that you were talking about, say, well, look, there are obviously struggling single parents.
Right. So why not get on the family court? Then why not go to family court and bust them down the way that you're doing with the liberal side, right? With the liberal douche side. They're part of the republic. They're part of the court system, right? And they hurt families bad. They've been fucking up families right from the beginning. I don't even know if I have enough time on this to get into it all. I got into some of it on the Candace Owens series, but it's on the Miguel Everyone channel. and the videos are not marked yet. There's a lot of stories that you could go over about that, right? But those are the judges. So why are you not saying, look at these family court judges? Look what they do. Look at this. Look what they do to the family. Why are they not being? I don't want to say jailed, because I think jailing everybody for everything doesn't make any sense. But called out. Why are they not called out? Why are those court systems not shut down and rehabbed to work for the human population rather than against them, right? But we don't. So you can bitch about the family. We can blame it on, they're in poverty. They don't have money. Their fathers were poor, and we can blame it on poverty. Poverty is purposeful. Middle class is purposeful. Upper class is purposeful. Everything is programmed. Everything is all human programs. That's the problem. If we went by what we could see with our own eyes, then we certainly would not go along with all these human programs. No fucking way. I don't think so, anyways.
People then thought that there was
a
perfect solution to this
you don't
problem.
look, you ain't never going to see
There's
it.
a perfect solution to human relationships. And there is no perfect relationship, perfect solution. There's only better and worse. And whatever form of human relationships you're going to have, there are going to be terrible ones. But as far as I could see, and I had no real opinion about this until I actually immersed myself in the world in which I did immerse myself. It's quite clear to me that without a formal structure of relationships, things are absolutely terrible for very large numbers of people. Now, of course, it's perfectly true that I saw, if you like, only the failed cases, but there may have been.
The question then would be, well, where would you find the successful cases? Because let's think this through, because it's a crucial point, Okay, so you have a biased sample, and maybe you approach this from an ethically conservative perspective, and so that produces your viewpoint, and it bears little relationship to the real world.
Successful cases get shut down.
But let's look for the counterexamples. So,
as soon as they
first of all,
work,
you can't look among the high-functioning middle to upper classes for counterexamples, because they're all married.
Yeah.
Right? So then you think, well, is there a subset of people who are poor, who are flourishing in their serial relationships, in their fragmented serial relationships? And, well, first of all, probably not, because they're poor, right? By definition, you've already excluded the middle and upper class. So I'm kind of curious about...
Well, I tried to think, I thought, well, how is someone living in these circumstances supposed to get out of this situation?
Right. So how does a banker charge $1.50 to $4 a pop for its customers to come in and take their own money out of an ATM machine every day, thousands of times a day, millions of times a month, adds up to millions of dollars of free money? Wouldn't you call that theft? And it still happens even to this day. We've been complaining about it for 30 years now, and it still happens. They put ridiculous restrictions on it. Oh no, if it's at our ATM, then we really can't charge more than $2.50. But if you go to someone else's ATM, then we have a right to charge up to $4. Come on, man. You got less tellers, less overhead, but yet the prices of the free service goes up, right? So then it's not really a free service anymore, is it? And then if every bank does it, where do you go to not have to do it, right? It's all fucked up. If you have below a certain amount of money, then you're going to pay the bank every fucking week, which turns into every month. And then if you have over a certain amount of money in the bank, then you collect interest. So you pay interest or you collect interest. It doesn't make any sense. Everything's reversed and upside down. So why not them? Why are we not talking about how fucking twisted, right? Wow, these people are really twisted, these rich people. These people that are very wealthy, they're sick. They're sick in the head, man. They think that these pieces of paper, or now it's not even paper anymore, it's a piece of plastic and numbers on a screen. So they think that these numbers are somehow going to make them happy. You know, we see them on Wall Street jumping out windows, and we see, you know, all these acting nuts, right? Going to hell, just like you're saying about everybody. They're all going straight to fucking hell. But we're not talking about that. We're still boosting and boasting up Joe Rogan and fake ass motherfuckers like you know, your outer space buddy there, Elon Musk. You know, so you're still building up Elon Musk, right? He's a billionaire, right? Where does he get his billions of dollars from? You say he's a self-made billionaire, is that right? Well, I'd look again, because that ain't the case, and you know damn well it ain't the case. So U.S. citizens, even though he comes from supposedly from Africa, U.S. citizens for some reason thought he would be a great space chaser, and he had this great idea and all this stuff. How did they come to this conclusion? What he introduced himself to the American people, and then one at a time? No, he came out of nowhere. He was out of nowhere, just like the same way Tesla himself was. You know, these nobodies. Bill Gates, he's a nobody, but yes, he gets built up to be the richest man on earth, right? No. It's all purposeful. So people like that are the ones that you should be chasing down. Not because they're rich, not because they have a lot of money, but because they have a lot of money for false reasons. Their whole identity is based on lies, human lies. We want to be entertained. We want to see what these crazy rich people like Donald Trump and Joe Biden and stuff. We want to know what they're going. Oh, what's this crazy old bastard going to do today? You know, oh my God, he crashed the economy in 2 years. He fucking crashed everything, right? Well, you know, I mean, things are about to get really, really bad. Everything that I was saying under the Candace Owens series, which I did about, I don't know, a year ago already now. It's already been about a year when I started it. And a lot of the stuff that I was saying throughout the series all has now come to fruition again. And trust me, it's going to come to fruition again. Things are going to keep happening just the way I'm saying it. Not because I'm smart, not because I'm a genius. I'm just reading between the lines of everything. And therefore you can see it. You know, so the idea that Trump's going to be coming back in, a lot of people will be like, no. And other people say, I hope so. Right, because you're always going to be a 50-50 mix, at least according to the statistics, it is, you know. So my point is that why not everybody? Why only, you know, first of all, why are we only locking up these certain people, right? Why is it only these certain crowds and you guys are okay with it? Why only are we locking up the fisherman that has, he's a rebel. He's down there fishing without a license. Got caught 3 times in 1 month fishing without a license. What a fucking rebel, right? No, because there shouldn't be any fishing without a license laws. You shouldn't even have to have a license to fish unless you're a regular fisherman. If you're a regular fisherman and you fish all the time, fine, go get a fisherman's license. But if you're just somebody that wants to go out and throw a pole in the water one day and have a couple of beers, there should be no law against it. And that's just one example. We can use the boat thing next. The boat motors, right? So you used to be able to have a 9 horsepower and a 10 horsepower, and then you couldn't have a gas depending on what water you were on, and then they got down to the small electric motors, and then you couldn't go over a 2 horsepower or something shit like that, and then now it's 1.5 horsepower, and then so in other words, you got to license your boat. You can't just throw a little rowboat on the water with a little fishing motor on it and stuff. Otherwise, they'll take your boat. They'll take your fucking shit. They'll take all your fishing equipment. They'll fine you. You have to go to court. You have to miss work to go to court. It's a bunch of shit. And this is what we do to these bad, terrible people. Terrible people. And I know the people that you guys are talking about are doing bad things. I'm just saying there are other people that also go to jail for these ridiculous reasons, and you would still have to counsel them if they were repeat offenders, right? Fucking crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't really speak about this because I never tried to teach anybody to read. I had an interesting experience.
Well, the data on that are pretty clear. If you teach children to read using phonetics,
yes,
which breaks it. We have a phonetic alphabet because that makes things easier. You only have to remember 26 characters and variants on them instead of 10,000, say. You teach the phonemes and you get them to aggregate them. And once they get to the point where they can read phrases, they start to read on their own account because it becomes rewarding. If you use other methods, they don't learn as well. So,
and then you can indoctrinate them to believing whatever the hell you want. Because you can write a Bible, you can write a several thousand-page biblical bullshit story that for hundreds of years, or at least minimum, would indoctrinate the people into believing this nonsense, right? And living by this nonsense. It's very good for the king and the queen and whoever's in power, no matter where you are. It's really good for that, but it's really bad for the poor people because it just lets them know that, it'll be better when they get to the other side. Give the devil his due while you're here on earth, and then when you get to the other side, you'll get paid tenfold by God's charm when you're in the heavens. Bullshit. We can see the whole fucking system. We can see the true creators work, the creators work, the false creators work, not in the way that you've ever been shown it to before. The way I'm showing it to you now, you can go see it for yourself like this, and then when you go look at it, you'll understand it all better. And it's much better than the lies. It'll strengthen everyone who goes and looks for themselves. You'll get stronger. Don't feel weak about it. Don't be afraid of it, of what you're seeing now. Right now, it's not that fearful to you because you're only looking at what some asshole is showing you on a computer screen. And that's great. But now if you go replicate what it is I'm doing, then you're going to have the temptation to be fearful because you're going to be seeing it with your own eyes. You'll be digitally collecting the EMNC, and you'll see it for yourself, and that might get a little bit scary. But I'm just telling people ahead of time, don't. Keep looking, keep looking, keep looking. It only gets better and better and better. It doesn't get worse. To be lied to is the bad part. To be lied to about everything is obviously, right? Think about it. Why would they be deceiving us about absolutely everything we do in life if it was supposedly good for us? You think they're anybody would do anything good for us as a whole? No, they want to control the populations. So this is how they do it, But as far as you go, Jordan Peterson, you're on one side, so I'm on no sides. I'm looking at all sides. I'm outside the box. I'm looking at all different sides. I'm seeing all sides as liars. I would like you to come into my box with me, just even if temporarily, momentarily, come into this box and go back and look at your conservative friends, all the things you've been taught all your life, all the books you've read, all the television, movies, videos, all the shit that you've ever seen, everything you've ever been indoctrinated into learning, and have another look at it. It won't take long because it's really an image is worth 10,000 words, right? So I'm going to be giving you gazillions of images myself just in the series that I'm doing for you to look at. And each one of those tells 10,000 words, right? Each image. So then once you start going and looking at the system for yourself, you're going to see gazillions of images per day. And then when you start seeing those, think about it, 10,000 words per each image. So all the books that you've been reading, don't worry about it. This is going to happen much faster. All the movies, the recordings you were listening to, all that shit will be told in seconds as you look at the imagery, as you see the true creator's work. And then from there, you'll see the rest. You'll keep figuring it out the same way that I did. I mean, I could tell you, and I probably will as I'm going along, but I'm out of time on this video almost anyway. Talking too much.
I'd rather have a relationship if they could figure out how to conceive of it that was stable and loving. All of these things that you could regard as arbitrary. A child would rather have a father and a mother that were around. So we could derive norms for the direction of our social policies that could be derived from the populations that we're hypothetically trying to serve. But we don't seem to do that either. We can't even agree that all things considered, it would be better to reward the presence of two-parent families.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I mean, all that I said in my books I thought was common sense, actually. Everything was more or less common sense. It wasn't work of great reflection or anything like that. It just seemed to me everything was obvious.
Tell me
And
about
yet,
maybe it takes exposure to 20,000 cataclysmic failures to make what's obvious salient. You know, because the problem with what's obvious is that it's invisible. You know, I found this out many times. So if I'm called on in an interview, for example.
There's no such thing as invisible. There's no such thing as zero.
Well, I don't actually know how to defend something that until 10 years ago was taken as a self-evident good. It's not like I have, or any of us for that matter, have a massive array of arguments at hand to justify cultural norms. In the fact that they're norms means you don't have the arguments at hand. They're so self-evident that they're not buttressed by a differentiated description.
Yeah. Well, you see, I used to write for a left-wing magazine as well as The Spectator, which is conservative, called New Statesman. I mean, it's not far left. It's, moderately left. And I used to go for lunch there. Sometimes, and we would have a discussion. And I met a very distinguished BBC broadcaster in the days when the BBC actually was not terrible. And he said he'd read me. And then he said, I wanted to meet you because I wanted...
In a time when the BBC was not terrible. Gee, I wonder when that was. Okay, during the war, they were... What am I at, 46 minutes? I can't even... Let me see. Shit, 46 minutes. All right, I can't get into it. I'll have to wait. I'll be back.